Hi everybody, I'm Marie Jenkins, and this is for my podcast, The Secret Diary of Marie Jenkins 47 Plus. And today I'm really delighted because I've got Nigel with me. Now, I met Nigel back in 2017, I think it was, but yes, we'll find out a bit more about Nigel. Hi, Nigel, how are you?
Morning, nice to see you. How are things going?
Brilliant, thank you. Thank you for joining me today.
You're welcome.
For our audience, tell me who you are and what's your background?
Okay, well, my name's Nigel Walton. My background, I started out in business in 1980. I graduated with a humanities degree. I was going to be a journalist. And when I went for an interview in London, in Fleet Street, and they told me the salary I'll be on, and the fact I had to live in London, I just said, no way could I live on that. So I quickly started looking at an alternative career. So I was very interested in marketing. And my father was a United Nations consultant living abroad. So I had quite a few network contacts. So I went abroad on a vacation and made some applications or speculative applications to some multinationals. And one of them agreed to employ me. So in 1980, I joined Sealy Posturepedic, which is the world's largest bedding brand. And they trained me up to be a marketing manager. And then I took responsibility for developing new markets in the Caribbean and South America. So I spent 10 years effectively setting up new manufacturing operations and distribution hubs as part of my earlier career. So that was 10 years doing that. That sort of came to an end after 10 years. They took the company private. It's now owned by Kohlberg Kravis Roberts, which is one of the top private equity companies. I've been very critical of the organization's efficiency, and I've been writing letters to Chicago, and I thought I was being ignored, but I wasn't. But my chance of stock options and my jet didn't happen. So I thought maybe I had the opportunity to work for a local company in the region, which I didn't like the idea of. So I came back to the UK, and I spent 10 years. I set up my own consultancy, strategy consulting firm. And what I did was doing turnarounds for medium-sized enterprises in the UK. This was partly through contacts I'd established with the big accounting firms when I was working overseas. A lot of them were Scottish, and my dad was the chieftain of the Caledonian Society. I got to know these guys, and they had a lot of projects which they didn't want to touch because weren't going to make them a lot of money. But they're also slightly problematic. So I agreed to actually take them on. So I was looking at medium-sized companies which were looking to grow to the next level or were in trouble and had to be restructured. So I did 10 years working in business doing that. During that time, I did a postgraduate diploma in marketing and also completed an MBA with the Open University. So that was kind of my earlier years. So it was, all of my business education has been done through distance learning it was before the internet in those days. So, but all my first degree was full time. So it's all been part time. So it's been hard work, but it's been good fun. So that's kind of, and then after that, I then moved into teaching. So I was still doing some consultancy, and in 1999, I actually started doing some teaching with Open University. So that's the earliest stages of my career.
Yeah, because that, like I alluded to earlier, you was our lecturer when I was doing my entrepreneurial degree. So talk me through a bit more about your sort of education career and what you're doing now.
Yeah, well, I did a humanities degree, and I wanted to be a journalist, and that made a lot of sense because I majored in English and politics, which was perfect. And I think it's that would have probably been a good choice of career because that's why I like teaching so much. So I was getting frustrated with the business side of things. It was very stressful, and you're not a popular person when you go into a company and you have to start making layoffs and doing various things. And it's quite a highly charged environment. So I started doing some part-time teaching. I'd done my MBA with Open University, and I taught at a strategy MBA residential school in Dublin, and for like 4 days. and it was fabulous. I really loved it. I thought this is really good fun. So I then applied. 2 years later, I got an associate lecture position with the Open University, teaching international enterprise. And at the same time, I applied to University of Worcester to do some HPL work, hourly paid lecturer. And I went for the interview and they accepted me. So my role at Worcester was really to, because I had a lot of business experience, I was the only person in the business school who was well equipped, in their opinion, to basically develop an enterprise program. So my role became senior lecturer in innovation and entrepreneurship. So that was my role. So I was responsible for taking and developing a pathway, an enterprise and innovation pathway for students, so that they could develop their skills in those areas. So I looked at 3 pillars which I focused on. I did a lot of research, and no university was doing creativity, enterprise, and innovation. So I focused on those 3 core areas. So the pathway was about how do you create new ideas? What's the creative process? How do you actually innovate? What is innovation, which is the commercialization of ideas? And then the entrepreneurial aspect, the actually setting up the business. So that was what I was kind of doing there. So since then, I worked at Worcester for a very long time. As you know, that's where I met you.
Yeah.
Nearly 3 years ago, I decided I wanted to move and do more research. So what I did was I joined Coventry. I did my PhD at Coventry, and I just graduated in 2018. And I knew a lot of the lecturers and the alumni. So I decided that a job was going there for an associate. No, it was a lecturer in business strategy at the time. And I applied for that and got it. So since then, I've been doing a lot of research in my area of technology and innovation. So that's been the kind of journey that I've been on. It's I've worked my way up through the ranks. I haven't there's not been any cronyism or anything. I had to go from the bottom and work up from teaching fellow up to lecturer, up to senior lecturer. And I did the same at Coventry. I'm now an assistant professor, having started out as a lecturer. So I've gone through the various rungs of the ladder to get to this current point.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like you said, I mean, we was very fortunate, and when I say we, students of the University of Worcester, because it was sort of the first sort of how can I say, entrepreneurial degree that was sort of put out there, and it was such a fantastic experience, and it's massively helped me in when I first started up my business.
Yeah.
Sort of having that knowledge of innovation and adaptability and flexibility and things. So I'm just thinking about people that are now thinking, oh, they want to sort of start up their own business and be innovative. What do you believe to be the biggest challenges or opportunities for those new entrepreneurs?
Well, I think there's lots of opportunities in the current environment as we come out of COVID. What we're about to see is it's been like a jack in a box, and this spring is going to leap out of this box, and people are going to go out and just go crazy. So they're going to be spending a lot of money. So I think there's a lot of opportunities there. Also, we'll have seen we're seeing a change in social behavior. So there's going to be new needs and wants, particularly as the digital elements of the economy have grown stratospherically since COVID. So everything is pushing more towards digital platforms, which is part of my research. And also, I think many markets will actually be a lot bigger than they were to begin with, at least initially. So, for example, my girlfriend had a dog caring business, and once we had COVID, she had to basically shut it down. People were just staying at home, and that was it. But recently, she's inundated now with bookings for people to look after dogs, because during this period, 3.2 million pets have been purchased by people in lockdown, and 60% of their new business has come from puppy dogs. You got one today, a 7-month-old boxer, which were acquired during lockdown, and these purchases could not have been made. So there's lots of opportunities in terms of markets are bouncing back. There are new needs and wants and requirements because of the change in the environment, the change in behavior. And also I think, but the issues are always usually surrounding, how I'm going to fund this. So money is always an issue. And obviously with quantitative easing and all the money that's been spent, keeping people in jobs, furloughed, or keeping businesses alive, the bill will come up sooner. There's a thing in the Financial Times today about tax increases, etc. And many organizations are obviously hugely in debt, unless you're one of the big tech platforms which benefited from COVID. Then you build up an awful lot of debt. So, raising funding and people, but, it's still possible to raise money. What COVID has done is meant that household debt has been reduced, and people have now more money because they haven't been able to go out and spend money on restaurants. They haven't been spending it on commuting. So they've got quite a lot of money, and we've still got crowdfunding and the internet, and this is where people often, So I think there's opportunities there. You've got to be digitally focused. Your business has to have a digital element to it now. And even if you don't have a platform, you have to be able to link up to some form of platform. I mean, my girlfriend's business requires no assets at all. And it's an asset-light business. And today, as I've been saying this for years, you can set up a business just with your smartphone, and that's what she does. She markets through Rover, and I think Dog Buddy is the platform. So she promotes it on that, and then she has an Instagram page and so on and so forth. And that's her cost. Her insurance, she took out insurance for £170, which was optional, wasn't compulsory. And all she needs is a home where she can accommodate the dogs when they arrive. So she set it up on zero capital. And lots of business like that where people can start up business with very little money. So
there's so many opportunities and different opportunities. So although tech companies are sort of leading the way, those other ones, like you said, like dog grooming or that type of thing, or healthy eating, or the fitness industries, they're also having a boom. So there are plenty of opportunities, and it's so easy to set up, like you've just said it with Heather, setting up her business. It's a fantastic time to follow whatever your passions are, what you enjoy doing, and make it into a business. So I think it's a fantastic opportunity and a great pivotal point in innovation. But I know you wrote, like we've spoken about your career in education, and you've been doing a lot of stuff on market research. But can you I know that you've done a number of articles that have also been published on innovation. Can you tell me a bit more about those?
Yeah, I mean, my PhD was looking at data and internet companies, and whether or not data was organizations which were data rich were more innovative as a result of having more data than the non-data rich companies, the traditional companies. So data is the basis upon which knowledge is built, and knowledge leads to innovation. So that's where it all started. But I wrote about 35 articles for there's a consultancy or think tank called Oxford Analytica, obviously based in Oxford, and I wrote 35 articles for them. This is all on technology. This is all on what we call the fourth industrial revolution. And the fourth industrial revolution is what we're experiencing at the moment. It's all about tech. It's all about the big platform internet companies, artificial intelligence. It's all about blockchain, Bitcoin, all these other technologies, which were an Internet of Things, industrial internet, Industry 4.0. And it builds on the third industrial revolution, which was the information communication and technology revolution, and so on. So that's the basis of. So I've written 35 articles on that, which are available on the Worcester website still, I think. Also, I've written a few books. I did a book on it was called the Internet as a technology-based ecosystem, a new approach to the analysis of business markets and industries. And this was looking at critiquing how we use certain tools businesses and as academic scholars, such as, the traditional approaches to strategic analysis being too top down, being too rigid, being too bureaucratic and slow, and the need for a more emergent approaches. So I wrote a book on that, which was a spin out from the PhD. I wrote a book called Technology Strategy 2 years ago, which purely focuses on data and internet companies and how they operate and how they do strategy in a completely different way. And when they were reviewing the book, they said, well, all your examples are in internet firms and tech firms. I said, yeah, that's the whole purpose of the book. So I make no apologies for that, because there was a gap in the market. And I've written some blogs promoting that book. I wrote a blog about Facebook's initial move into developing its own currency, which originally was going to be a cryptocurrency. And then I wrote another blog about a year ago talking about how COVID had turbocharged the digital economy. If we think about MS Teams, Microsoft had launched MS Teams at the beginning of COVID. They had 13 million users. And then within about a month, they had 115 million users. So that's pretty impressive sort of stuff. And I mean, Disney Plus, who would compete with Netflix, they had about a few million subscribers at the beginning of COVID, and then within 2 to 3 months, they had something like 70 million. So I wrote some stuff on that. I'm currently co-authoring a book on platform strategies and platform resilience in the current economy. That's with Edward Elgar. That should go out. That'll go out next year. So working on that one. I've written a number of book chapters on technology and platform. I mean, my focus of research is on what we call platform companies, and these are very different to traditional companies. All my writing has been around that, because these are what we call the new factories of the fourth industrial revolution. In the first and second industrial revolutions, or particularly the first industrial revolution, we moved from the cottage industries into the workplace, into the big factories. And then we had the automated assembly lines from Henry Ford in the second industrial revolution. The current one, the platforms, do things completely differently. A pure platform is what we call a marketplace. It doesn't actually make a product or deliver a service directly. It creates connections between users. So, if you've got a dog and you want somebody to look after it, you go onto the platform. So you're the customer, and the supplier is the other person who has that expertise. And Alibaba, if you're a small business, Alibaba or Amazon Marketplace don't handle your goods. If you want to buy a book on Amazon these days, it's probably going to come from Wordary or another company. So this is a hugely efficient way of managing how organizations operate, because they're data rich, because they collect data from three or four sides of the platform. They're able to create matches between buyers and sellers and other third parties in a more efficient way. And this is what's transforming, the global economy at the moment. So everything we do today is usually linked to some kind of a platform. And your smartphone is a classic example of how we connect to those companies.
I totally get it. And actually, you've just reminded me, so thank you very much. I've got my bike tour coming up in May, and I need to find someone to have my doggy. So I heard on the TV there's something called Borrow My Doggy. So I'll have to have a look at that. But sorry, I digress.
It's a growth area. I mean, anybody who wants to set one up in Worcestershire or whatever, it's worth looking at, because it's zero cost. The risk is minimal, and it's dead easy to set up, and we love our pets. We will pay people a reasonable amount of money to look after them, and because pets are not only a member of the family, but they're also very expensive now, because people are stealing them and selling them on, because the cost of a pet has gone up astronomically over the last 12 months. So things like that are worth looking at.
Absolutely. And like you said earlier, it's just another example of the sort of new businesses that are emerging.
Yeah.
And I completely take your point about, data and Bitcoin. They're the new sort of innovation, very much. And I think it's fascinating when you learn about Bitcoin I mean, I understand it, how it works, but how do you see Bitcoin being used and data being used in the
Well,
future?
I'm starting to look at an article called Bitcoin 2.0, because we have the first Bitcoin, which was when it went up to 19,500 and then crashed within 12 months. It's now gone through new records. It's now hit 64,000. It's around about 54,000 today. There's been a correction. The big difference between Bitcoin 2.0, as I call it, is that we've got a lot of commercial interest now. So there are corporations investing it. I mean, Elon Musk has invested in it. PayPal, the credit card companies, the investment banks are now taking it seriously.
Yeah.
It has a lot of issues that need to be fixed. Many of these are the scams. One's been volatility, although volatility has reduced recently, but it's still highly volatile. There's also issues around its value as a medium of exchange, and also, these are key factors. And it uses up a huge amount of energy to mine a Bitcoin. It's like the entire electric output of Switzerland, I think. So these things have to be fixed. But the advantages are that, and one of the criticisms of what we call the fiat currencies, which we use today, is that with all the quantitative easing that we had after the financial crash, with all the quantitative easing we're getting at the moment through from COVID, this is ultimately going to lead to the debasement in the value of what we call the fiat currencies, so the dollar and all these other currencies. But how do you hedge against inflation? So Bitcoin is quickly emerging as a new asset class. And the key thing is, as it grows in size, in terms of the market size, that will reduce the volatility. Because at the moment you have a few very big whales. These are big investors who own a large proportion of the coins, which causes quite a lot of volatility. So it has, in the past, it's been a highly speculative form of financial product. But as more and more people use it, and it becomes a medium of exchange, that will cause this to correct. And as more and more people, adopt it, that will also reduce the volatility. So it's definitely, and the big, the actual central banks and the banks of international settlements are all seriously looking at it now and developing their own digital currencies. China is developing its own digital currency. And this, I think, is what will lead to the adoption of it, because there's a risk that if China gains digital sovereignty over a currency, everybody else will have to follow suit. So America will seriously have to consider this. So China would like to have, have a reserve currency. And this is one way in which they can move towards that, by getting a digital currency accepted. So it's a very exciting and interesting area, and it's no longer a fad or a fashion. It's here to stay. And it arose because of the financial crash. Banks weren't lending any money, and Satoshi Nakamoto said, the people should control their own money, and it should be decentralized. So Bitcoin and crypto going forward may not be hugely decentralized as it was originally envisaged, but it'll certainly be, the different forms of digital and cryptocurrencies will emerge. I think it's definitely an area to be looked at.
Yeah, and growth as well. I mean, there's different ways in which you can use Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. So, like Dr. Adrian Burden over at Malvern Festival of Innovation, they've developed crystals as an example for like Bitcoin crystals. So I think it's very much evolving, but like you said, it's exciting really, because it's something completely new. It's a question of watch this space, I should imagine.
Yeah, very much so. I'm hooked up to it. I watch it every day and pick up things. And I've just been following the price, because you get corrections. We're in a correction at the moment. We're down to 54,000 from 64, but it's pretty solid. And that's when new people come in. They okay, well, now it's a good time to buy. It's cheap, so it's definitely worth watching. It's very interesting.
Yeah, like stocks and shares. It's like the new generation in that. It's probably
I mean, this is definitely, we're looking at a new asset class, and the rich need to have somewhere to put their money. And if we're going to if we're going to increase tax, what it does tend to do, it tends to track the dollar. So when the dollar goes weak, people go into Bitcoin quite a lot. That tends to be the trend at the moment. And if there's tax increases, which then result in a further depreciation of the dollar, then you'll see Bitcoin going up again. So it's a hedge against inflation. So how do you? Yeah, and there is an upper limit to how many Bitcoins that can be mined. I think it's 21 million. So once it hits that, so that's why it's non-inflationary. So
it's fascinating. It's a fascinating topic. So anyway, can we talk about? We've spoken about Coventry, but can you give me some examples of when you've worked in education that's been the most rewarding for you?
The most rewarding for me was probably in my early days, 2000, when I was at Worcester. I was basically given the responsibility of developing the enterprise program, and I thought, well, how do I launch this? I was then only an hourly paid lecturer, so how do I? We had one module with 23 students on it, and when I left, I think we had about 400 students. So how do I get people interested in this? So I had a friend who'd, when I was in business from America, he'd been at Stanford, and they said, we got this thing called an enterprise school, which is really cool. It's now the boot camp, and we use it all the time. You're familiar with the boot camp.
Yeah.
But in 2000, 2001, nobody had used it in Britain, I don't think. I don't know if some of the top universities had done this. So he said, it's an enterprise school. And what you do is you fast track an idea. You get your students to come in, they work in teams, they got an idea, and you take them through all the various stages, marketing, route to market, the finance, the operations. And you need to bring in some experts from industry to coach them. And then you do a kind of a pitch at the end. We didn't call it the Dragon's Den pitch then, because this was 2000. Dragon's Den didn't happen until 2005. So I got these guys on board. I didn't have many contacts. So I'd literally just come from abroad, and I didn't know anyone. And I don't know who it was. Some contact came up with about 3 guys, and they were very, very skeptical about this. Well, we'll come along, Nigel. We're interested. And I thought, they were kind of typical classical, left school at 16, education's a load of rubbish. She taught me nothing. Came into this now. This isn't going to work, I thought. And anyway, we got through. The dynamics seemed to be good. I was observing. I actually did a session on marketing. So what we did was, usual pattern. The entrepreneur would present their area of specialism, and then they would work with the students to develop either the financial bit or whatever it was. And then we had the Dragon's Den pitch at the end. And it was very interesting. The reason I was quite pleased about it was, it was completely novel, but the response from the entrepreneurs and the students was mind-blowing.
Yeah.
When they did the final pitches and we voted for the winner, the 3 entrepreneurs got up and said, this is the most amazing experience we've ever gone through. I wish I'd had this when I was 16, 17. You've done more. He said this to the student, you've done more in the last 5 days, and it took me 10 years and a lot of money to achieve. And that was a phenomenal endorsement from very hardened people who were very skeptical about education. The students thought it was great, but also the interesting thing was 2 of the ideas, which didn't actually win, they came second. I voted for them both. One, this is 2000, was a streaming service for movies. Netflix didn't happen in 2007.
Wow.
Another one was for food delivery. They actually did, they noted that McDonald's and all these other companies didn't deliver food, and they actually came up with some numbers. Obviously, to make it work, you needed the iPhone and the smartphone and the apps to really make it, to create that platform.
Yeah.
But these guys were ahead of the time, and I always go back to the streaming idea. And it was a niche one. It was for classic movies, but the technology wasn't quite there. That's why I didn't win, because we hadn't got full 3G then.
Yeah.
Early. And the other one was, food delivery. Both, I thought those are really good. So that was really, really, really rewarding, because it was novel and new. And now I look at the boot camp and I still smile. I think, yeah. And I hear people saying, well, I learned more in these last 5 days. And we have, before. So that was quite good.
I totally agree. And like when I was doing my entrepreneurial degree at Worcester, the first year, David Boswood ran the boot camp. And he's now at the Royal Agricultural College. And then Joe Murphy took it over, who was our course lead. And it was just absolutely phenomenal. But the added value, and it's what you've said, for me as a student, was actually having industry experts that come along. And, you know, we had our entrepreneurs in residence at Worcester. But that was so valuable because you're learning from people with real life skills in business.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's essential. That's partly why they gave me the job of developing it, because I've been in it. I mean, I learned quite a lot of new things. I mean, the first one, the term intrapreneur and corporate entrepreneur, I hadn't come across. And an entrepreneur, or what we call a corporate entrepreneur, is someone who's entrepreneurial within a big organization. And I suddenly realized that that's what I'd been doing in my first job for 10 years. I was basically setting up companies. I had all the backing of headquarters and I had to have strategies for it. But I was setting up new businesses, going into new markets and, you know, opening warehouses, setting up systems. And, you know, I'd been a corporate entrepreneur. I didn't really realize it. Never even thought of it, you know. So it's quite interesting. But
it is. It's
how the two mesh together, how one reinforces the other. They are very, you know, very closely linked. It's very, very important.
Absolutely, totally agree. And it's definitely the day of entrepreneurship now, because, you know, we're in that age where, like you said earlier, anybody can pretty much start their own business, which is fantastic, because it's empowering for those individuals, isn't it, to follow their passions. So
also the stigma around not having an office is gone now, because, you know, the big firms now. I mean, I remember when I was operating, I had my consultancy, I had one guy who came around and deliberately insisted on meeting me because he knew he's going to come to my home, because I was Nigel Walton Associates, but I was subcontracted by the accounting firms to do the project they didn't want to do. And I knew this guy was going to do that. And, you know, I could see, you know, oh, it's not a proper, it was a big house. It was, you know, very nice, better than most offices. And I've never been an office person, because even when I was working for the multinational, I was in hotels, traveling around all the time, because that was the nature of what I was doing. So I've never been a believer in offices. That stigma's gone. So you don't even need your office address.
We're all used to looking into people's living rooms. So, like, you're based at home, and I'm in my kitchen. So, but that's become the norm, hasn't it?
The breath of fresh air, I think, take away that stigma. And literally, you just need a connection to an internet.
Exactly. Or your smartphone, like you were saying earlier.
Smartphone, laptop, whatever. Yeah.
Nigel, I'm acutely aware I've been talking and listening to you, so we've had our half an hour and it's been absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much for joining me today. If people want to reach out, how do they get in touch with you?
You can email me. I have 2 email addresses you can use. I mean, I'll give you the Open University one, who I also work for, because the other one may get spammed. I've got a Coventry one. I mean, it's n.a.walton@open.ac.uk.
Okay.
And the other one is ad0006@coventry.ac.uk.
Fantastic. So I'll put all of those as well in description so that people can reach out to you. But you're also on Twitter, so if people are listening and have any questions, they can join us for our Twitter hour on Friday at 1:30. But thank you so much, Nigel. It's been lovely to catch up with you, and thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah, thank you very much. And
thanks a lot. All the best. Bye.